Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, December 16th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Rose Bowl game against Utah in 16 days, the game against Michigan in 346 days. Yesterday was early signing day, and the Buckeyes got a lot of good news and a little bit of bad news as well. Quarterback Terence flipped and signed with Texas, but pretty much everything else more or less went as expected for Ohio State. Linebacker Gabe Powers did not sign on Wednesday, but from all indications, he's just planning to wait until a ceremony on Friday at his high school to do so. Once those players were signed, it became the first time that Ryan Day could actually talk about them by name under NCAA rules. Day held a press conference on Wednesday at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center to discuss that class, his team's preparation for the Rose Bowl, and the hiring of new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, and what it's all going to mean for his staff in 2022. Let's start with that. What is the latest on Jim Knowles and the plans for the 2022 coaching staff? You're going to hear that answer from Day, and then a follow-up from Patrick Murphy from Bucknuts. Now, all of this audio and video is courtesy of the Ohio State University Athletics Department.
Yeah, when after we get done with the bowl game, I'll be interested to sit down with you guys and introduce Coach Knowles and do a press conference with him and kind of introduce him the right way. Now is not really the time to get into all that because we want to do a great job in the bowl game, and so he and I have talked about that we're going to visit over the next couple weeks, and then obviously right after the Rose Bowl and kind of figure out what this is going to look like on the defensive side. But right now, we just, for our guys, the focus needs to be on having a great month of practice here. We only got 2.5 weeks before we play in this game and playing really well against Utah.
You mentioned bringing in Devin, obviously with the quarterback shuffles that have gone on that we've talked to you about. What do you like about him and what can he bring to this program when he arrives?
First off, you guys can watch the film. His athletic ability, ability to run, ability to throw is tremendous. He did a really good job this past year, wherever he's been. The people who worked with him at the Elite 11 have nothing but raving reviews about him. And then when you just talk to him, you just realize what an outgoing personality is. Just has a magnetic way about him. The guys in the class have already grabbed onto him. I was really excited during this process. And, he wanted to come to a place where he could compete at a high level and wasn't really concerned about who else was in the room, just wanted to go and get after it. So I think when you combine all of those things, we're very, very excited Devin's a part of this thing and part of our future.
Hiring Jim Knowles, obviously the big change so far this offseason for Ohio State. So when did that decision actually get made? And also, how did that get communicated to recruits as they were nearing the home stretch before early signing day?
Yeah, we just talked about, and Jim spoke with a bunch of them, and just anybody who had any questions, he was there for them. But that the structure of what we're going to do isn't going to make a huge difference. But also a lot of those guys, we encourage them to watch the film at Oklahoma State and see how they're doing things and ask questions. But we're going to do the best we can to keep the coaching staff that's in place there now the same. But we're going to have discussions and figure out what's the best moving forward. And that's just kind of how we did it through the process. And I think at the end of the day, the recruits understood that they want to come to Ohio State and be part of this culture. And so I think that the conversations were good, and the guys who spoke with Jim were really excited.
Linebacker C.J. Hicks is the highest rated member of that class, comes out of the Dayton area. Buckeye Scoop Smart Gifler dubbed him Captain Buckeye pretty early in the process for his recruiting efforts on behalf of Ohio State. And he really was instrumental in helping land some of the other highly ranked players that they have brought into this class. Ryan Day was asked, what did C.J. Hicks really mean to this recruiting class?
Yeah, I think when you've had some really good classes of quality people like we have right here of 17 guys, and again, the quality of the guy is as good as there is in the country right here. But a lot of that has to do with C.J. He jumped in this thing early, and he recruited a lot of these guys. He built that relationship, and there were some guys along the way that were good football players, but they just didn't quite fit what Ohio State was all about in our culture. And these guys are able to see them at the camps, at the rivals events, the opening, all these different things that they go to, and they spend time together. And in that moment, we don't get a chance as coaches to see them. They do. And CJ was a big part of that. His mom, Tiffany, was great. And they really spearheaded this thing. And so he's a big part of this class and a big part of our future.
The other five-star member of this class is Sonny Styles. He's a defensive recruit. He's listed as a safety, but he could end up playing just about anywhere on defense for the Buckeyes before it's all said and done. He was originally supposed to be a 2023 recruit, but then he reclassified to 2022 signed a year early with the Buckeyes. When did he start talking about reclassifying with Ryan Day, and where is he potentially going to line up for the Buckeyes?
It was right after he committed. I want to say, I forget which game it was. It was a home game. We were over at the Blackwell, and he kind of shared he was going to commit, and then quickly said, we're thinking about reclassifying, and then went about the business of finding out that information. Everywhere, yeah, we're gonna use him everywhere we can. He can do a lot of things. He can cover. He can blitz. He can play zone. He can play man. He's like a Swiss Army knife out there. So I know, our guys on defense are going to be excited to have him in different roles and as he builds.
There were some big surprises on signing day, as Jackson State landed the #1 overall player in the class, for one example. Terence Brooks flipping away from Ohio State as another. But a lot of the changes seem to be driven by the new legislation involving name, image, and likeness. Day said overall NIL is a positive for his players, but he still does have some concerns on how the impact it could have on the sport.
It's very complicated, and for I think just the sport itself, I think the concerning part is that, the coaches can't set that up. The coaches, in Ohio State is not allowed to set those type of deals up. That has to come from outside the university. And now, you are counting on and people are influencing these kids who are outside of the university. And I think, again, that's concerning. And sometimes you can look at it and, you can say to yourself, well, what really are the rules here? Other than the fact that the coaches and the school can't set up the deals. That being said, Ohio State and our guys have benefited tremendously from NIL. There's been a lot of opportunities for our guys, and they've really capitalized on that. However, the understanding of something coming in on the front end is something that we cannot be a part of. And so, the integrity of this school and how we do things is going to be important for us, and it always has been.
For a number of years, the Buckeyes recruiting classes were headed up by a lot of players on the offensive sides of the ball. Years of 5-star quarterbacks, 5-star wide receivers at the top of those classes. Recently, there have been more defensive players towards the top of those classes. We mentioned Hicks, Styles at the top of this class. Both guys were playing on the defensive side of the ball. Was that an intentional thing to have more balance at the top of the class? You're going to hear that answer from Day, as well as a follow-up from Bill Landis of The Athletic.
I don't know if we verbalized it like that, but I knew that, we've got to recruit the best players in the country at all positions. And so that's a challenge to each of the position coaches to go out there and do a great job of recruiting their position. And so at the end of the day, I challenge those guys as much as I can, take care of your position. And because nowadays, most of the guys, they do position specific recruiting. And certainly during COVID, it was really all position specific recruiting. Now that we're getting back on the road, guys are starting to get some recruiting areas. But at the end of the day, these guys are responsible for their position. And, I'm very much involved with that. I take a lot of pride in building relationships with all these guys and making sure I have my hands on all the recruiting with the families. And it's a big part of what I do. But at the end of the day, each position coach is responsible to take care of their position.
I guess along those lines, I think earlier this year you said something to the effect of you want to have a spot or two, maybe most years, for a developmental offensive tackle, I guess, for lack of a better word. But the last few classes, maybe with the exception of guys like Nick or Paris, do you feel like you have too many of those developmental guys coming in and not enough of the higher level caliber guys like a Nick or a Paris at that position?
I think, we'll kind of see. We'll see as we get into the next year or so. We'll see how these guys have done. If they're able to get on the field here in the next year or so, then we've done a good job. If they haven't, then we swung and missed. But I think the proof will be in the pudding here over the next probably calendar year.
Bringing in Jim Knowles is obviously meant to shore up the Ohio State defense, but the fact that he's there means someone on the coaching staff is going to have to go. They can only have 10 assistants. They're adding one. So at least one person who was on the 2021 Ohio State coaching staff is not going to be there for 2022. Does all that uncertainty with the defensive coaching staff impact their ability to recruit on the defensive side of the ball? You'll hear Day's answer on that, as well as a follow-up from Stephen Means of Cleveland.com.
I don't think so. I think when you look at the guys that we've signed here on defense, it's a good class, and I think, like you said, with some of the little bit of that uncertainty mixed in here in these first 2 weeks of December, to see, for this class that we have signed here today. I think it's really impressive.
The guys asked just flat out, are certain coaches still going to be here?
Yeah. They obviously want to know who's going to be here year in and year out, and the guys that recruit them, they have relationships. Yeah.
And then just switching gears a little bit with Devin Brown, just with how the Quinn Ewers situation kind of played out here. When was it clear that you guys wanted and needed to add a 2022 quarterback? And can you just kind of give us the timeline of how you guys identified Devin and got it?
Well, like we talk about, we want to bring in a quarterback every year for a lot of reasons, but when Quinn decided to reclassify, we went about the business of trying to find a quarterback in that class, but we weren't going to force it. We had to find somebody that we thought fit, and we looked at a couple different guys, really only about 2 or 3, and Devin stuck out. He just did. I mean, I was sold kind of when I watched his film and then got him on the phone. And then he showed me a video of him windmill dunking, and that kind of put me over the top. I said, look at this guy. He's got a tremendous personality, very, very competitive, very gifted, very intelligent, but also very athletic. And excited to just see his energy come into this building here pretty soon.
Given all of that uncertainty in the wake of the loss to Michigan, how were they able to keep things together as well as they did? There was a lot of question marks, and really still are, around the Ohio State coaching staff and the Ohio State program right now. So how were they able to pretty much keep the most of the class together? You'll hear that answer from Day, and then a follow-up from Joey Kaufman of the Columbus Dispatch.
I think it's the relationships that are built, and it's the culture. And I think when you look across college football right now, there's a lot of head coaches that had to move, and so there's just a lot of craziness that's gone on over the last 3 weeks. But one thing's for sure here is that the culture is in place here, and I think the guys understood that. And I'm a big part of the recruiting process. I mean, I'm involved with those guys, and I tell those guys I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. And part of that is giving you the best position coach you can and the best coordinator you can. And at the end of the day, that's what's important.
What was it like for you being on the road just the last couple of weeks, having not been able to do that last year?
It's been great. It really has been great. I think I really enjoyed going and meeting just the principals, the ADs, going into these young men's home, getting to know their moms and their dads, and just seeing how they grew up, and just learning different things about them. You don't forget the things that you learn when you walk into somebody's house or you walk into their school, and you just hear different stories. I went into a Bennett Christian school, and the principal walked right up to me and told me a story that I'll never forget about Bennett. Those are the things you don't experience when you're on a Zoom call. And I think with a lot of our guys, we had to build the relationships last year over Zoom, and that was a challenge. But it was great to get back on the road and be around these folks.
The one piece of bad news the Buckeyes got on early signing day was the loss of Terence Brooks to a late flip. He flipped to Texas. So with Brooks out now, do they need to hit the transfer portal? Do they need to bring in new guys in February? How do they address the loss of Brooks at the cornerback position? You'll hear that, and then a follow-up from Dan Hope of 11 Warriors.
We want to have 8 corners on the roster, and so I feel really good about our young corners. I thought we hit a home run last year, and the room that we have, we'll kind of find out who's going to move on and who's going to stay in terms of the NFL here, but the goal is to have 8, and so. If we need to sign one more here into February, we will. If not, we'll have to maybe look at the transfer portal and see. But, we have to make sure we have 8 in that room. Yep.
And in terms of a Rose Bowl, have you gotten any indication, anybody considering opting out at this point? Or are you still expecting to have a full roster?
Yeah, so there's still some guys kind of figure that out. And, when I have more information on those guys, I'll let you know.
Tight end Bennett Christian got into the class very early and was kind of a forgotten man in a lot of ways. Imagine that, Ohio State fans forgetting about the tight end. Who could imagine? But Bennett Christian is someone who they feel brings a lot to the table and could be a really big piece of their puzzle for them in the coming years. So what do they like so much about Christian? You'll hear that. And then you hear a follow-up from Spencer Holbrook of Letterman Row.
Well, he's well-rounded in a lot of areas as a person, but as a football player, he's strong. I mean, he can do a really good job at the line of scrimmage, blocking the 7 technique, but he also can run routes and get down the field. He's got good versatility that way. And, I think, some tight ends are developmental just physically. I don't know if he's developmental physically. I mean, he's got to change his body a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, this is a good, big-looking tight end, you know, where a lot of guys come in a little undersized, like 215, 220, and you got to really grow him into the position. You know, he's already kind of there. He's going to have to, you know, put on some more weight as it goes, but now it's just going to be about learning our offense and learning the techniques with Coach Wilson, and then we'll get him into this thing. But it'll be quick. You know, I think he's going to assimilate quick. He's very intelligent, and you know, he's been a very solid part of our class, like you said, for a while.
On the other side of the ball, you signed Caden Curry to shore up that defensive line. To work on getting a commitment from a guy for 18 months, to see it pay off right at the last second, almost 24th hour. What is that like for your coaching staff to know that all of those months of work on one of your very top prospects really just paid off?
Yeah, it was great. I hope I'm not, you know, putting Caden out there, but he said, you know, Coach, I kind of knew I was going there all along. I said, well, you could have saved us a lot of sleepless nights by just telling us, you know, a little bit sooner than just the other day. But he's a very, very talented young man. He's very, very productive on the field. Comes from a really good program, back-to-back state championships. Comes from a really good family. Tough player, and somebody that we had targeted, like you said early on, and a lot of hard work to get him in the boat. But he's going to have a tremendous career here. I think he's very, very excited about the opportunity to come in here and be a Buckeye. But I thought it was everybody involved. Like you said, it wasn't just Larry. Larry had a huge part in it, but it was everybody. And very proud to say that he's part of this class.
Traditionally, signing day has always been an event on the first Wednesday in February. But back in 2017, the NCAA changed the rules and implemented an early signing day in December. The idea was if you knew where you were going, you could just get it signed, sealed, and delivered, not have to worry about it dragging on past New Year's, past Christmas, just have it out of the way and not have your phone ringing and your text blowing up for an extra month and a half for no reason. But things haven't exactly worked out the way people maybe expected when they made that change. So is it time to think about changing it back to just a February signing day? You'll hear that answer from Day, and then you hear a follow-up from Austin Ward of Letterman Row.
I think we should keep it the way it is now, because I feel like there's been so many changes right now in college football that we don't need anymore. And the minute we start changing it again, there'll be unintended consequences again, and there'll be just new things. So I vote for let's not change the signing date right now. Let's try to figure out some other ways to make things better.
So with where it is right now, and you were dealing with players going in the transfer portal, NFL decisions, you were hiring a defensive coordinator. I mean, when are you supposed to balance in this recruiting stuff and being on the road? I mean, how do you sleep? This
right.
seems difficult to me.
Well, it's part of the job. It's part of the job, and no one said it's easy, but that's what it is. And I think one of the biggest challenges right now is the unknown. I think for a long time, you knew what the rules were. You knew what to expect. Right now, you feel like things are changing on a daily basis, and you have to stay out in front of it the best you can. And I think that's probably the most unnerving thing right now for all of us.
The Buckeyes have just 2 guys officially signed on the defensive line right now. Now, other guys are announcing in January, including Hero Canoe and Amari Abor. Those are people we've talked about the last couple of days with Bill Green and Mark Givler. So you can read into this answer what you want on where those recruitments stand. Is it a concern that they only have 2 guys signed on the defensive line right now? You'll hear Day's answer on that, and you can hear a couple follow-ups from Jeremy Birmingham of Letterman Row.
Yep, it's important. Got to get it done. I mean, it will get done one way or another. We're going to find somebody to fit in those roles, because we got to have 8 defensive tackles and 8 defensive ends. That's the goal. So we got to do it, and we feel really good about a couple of them.
On a guy like Caden Curry, who can play inside or outside, I know you've recruited him a long time, but when you look at his productivity, his talent, and then you see some of the rankings out there on him, I know you guys don't care about rankings per se, but you look at him, are you kind of surprised at the lack of national accolades for a kid like that? Because what makes him that guy for you? I mean, why has he been that guy for you guys for so long?
Well, first off, Caden's never been a guy that's gone onto a lot of these camps and tried to go and gather offers and try to grab stars. That's never been his deal. And his deal is just go win a state championship and be the best player he can possibly be. He played a lot of baseball and is a really good baseball player, so he missed out on a lot of those things, which I don't think you'd have it any other way. But I also think, he's very, very talented. I spoke with somebody not far back who actually went to his game. He's in NFL personnel, And he texted me right away, who is this Caden Curry? And he said, this guy's going to be an NFL player here in about 3 years. And he goes, doesn't take long to figure that one out. I mean, when you watch him play, you just see him jump off the screen. And in a day and age where it's a lot about the stars and about going to these camps and getting certain ratings, I don't think Caden was concerned about that. I think all he cared about was his teammates, playing really at a high level, winning a state championship, and now coming to Ohio State and being the best football player he could be.
Was it for him to make the decision to be here in 3 weeks as opposed to 6 months from now?
Yeah, it was hard. I know he wanted to play baseball, and that was a tough decision for him. But it was big for him. It's going to be big for him to get here. He's a Midwest guy, and I just think getting to work and getting to work with Larry and getting in the room with the weight room with Mick, those are all going to be opportunities for him to get on the field quickly next September.
Do you have an idea of exactly how many guys you're looking at for the January enrollment?
It moves a little bit. I want to say we're targeting about 12 or 13. I think maybe 1 or 2 of those would possibly be a transfer portal. We're still considering a couple guys in that area. So I think we're right in that 12 to 13 range.
Ohio State announced the hiring of Jim Knowles a little more than a week ago, and then not long after that, Oklahoma State let him know that his services would not be needed for their bowl game. So Knowles is technically available to help the Buckeyes right now. Is Day planning on having him in the building before the Rose Bowl to help guys get ready for that game? You'll hear that answer, and then follow up from Steve Hellwagon of Bucknuts.
No, we're going to kind of start fresh on the 2nd. He is going to come for a couple days and just kind of get a lay of the land, meet with a few folks. I don't think it's the right thing to do to have him out of practice. I just think that our staff is intact right now, and we're going to do a great job playing in the Rose Bowl. And but yeah, get him here for a couple days, just kind of get the lay of the land, and then we'll start fresh in the 2nd.
I want to ask about a couple guys. This seemed like a year unlike any other where a guy would play 1 week, miss 3 weeks, play 2 weeks, miss 3 weeks. It was just kind of the weirdest, I don't know from your standpoint how it was, but Master T, 20 carries against Michigan State and doesn't even play or doesn't even go to Michigan. Tyleik Williams started midseason, didn't play a whole lot after that. Just, I don't know, individually, if you have anything to say about those 2 guys in particular, and then just from your standpoint, was this a difficult year knowing from 1 week to the next who you could count on? Because it just seemed like when he puts the list out, you're like, he played last week, why is he on this list this week?
Yeah, well, some guys, fought injuries all year. We did lose some guys for the season, but some other guys who just fought injuries throughout the season. And it's very hard to play on Saturdays if you're not practicing during the week. And certainly some guys did a really good job of taking care of their bodies. Some guys, unfortunately, had some things that happened to them, and that's part of the game. You try to work through it. Other guys, we played some young guys early on, and then certainly found our way as the season went on, and a lot of that had to do with the depth chart and how that kind of trickled throughout the season. But I think it's a combination of those 2 things.
One of the late additions to Ohio State's 2022 recruiting class was a quarterback. Of course, they had Quinn Ewers committed for a long time, and he reclassified to 2021, and then he left, and now he's at Texas. So they wanted to make sure they got another guy, another quarterback in this class. They ended up signing Devin Brown out of Utah. So was there a moment when Day knew, for one reason or another, that Brown was the guy he really wanted? You'll hear that. And then some follow-ups from Tim May of Letterman Row.
Yeah, I think, like you said, you kind of have that with each of the guys. And I can kind of remember with CJ, I can remember with Kyle when he was out here throwing for us one time. And I think it was Devin when I got a chance to meet him. Certainly the film speaks for itself and all the people that have worked for him. But when you sit in a room with him and you look him in the eye and you listen to him talk and you just hear him talk about football and talk about competing and those type of things, that was my moment.
With Caden, for example, when you guys are looking for a guy to play up front on the defense, are you looking as much a little bit for a nasty streak in a guy too? I mean, what just has to jump off at you just besides him making plays?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things, but Caden definitely has that, and that toughness and that edge to him is something that's a must, and he has it. And I'm excited that he's going to be getting here and kind of getting to work on that stuff. But he also has tremendous twitch and, like you said, makes a lot of plays and runs to the ball. I think his motor is what's the most special about Caden Curry. He runs sideline to sideline. You watch his highlight film, you just see how hard he plays every play. And that's something for us that we recognized early.
And in that same vein, Jim Knowles, what is it about? I mean, I know you don't want to talk a lot about him right now, but what is it about his defenses in particular? Is it their creativity? I mean, just explain what just really attracted you to him.
Well, it was all the above. I mean, I think when you're coming in to be the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and again, we'll talk about this more, but, you have to check all the boxes. It's not just one. But I think, his past and what he's done, when you watch the guys who have played for him, what they've done schematically, how they speak of him, former coaches that have worked with him, that he's worked for, you add up all of those things and you look at the production, it all speaks for itself. And again, we'll get into more of that as we get to that press conference.
That show was a little longer than these typically run when we do these, but there was a lot to talk about. We haven't heard from Day really in about 10 days, and there's been a lot of news and a lot of changes and a lot of stuff to talk about. So wanted to get through all of that stuff, give you guys an update on all of that. We will be back tomorrow, obviously, with another show. There should be a lot to talk about as we head into the Rose Bowl preps, as we head into what next for Ohio State now that they've signed their early part of their class. Who are they looking to add to the class? Are they looking at the transfer portal? All that kind of stuff. Coaching staff changes. There is going to be a ton to talk about. So make sure you check out all of our great podcasts. Tony Gerderman and I will be doing a bunch of podcasts on the recruiting class, on the upcoming bowl season, much more on Buckeye Weekly. But all of our great podcasts, you can find them on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, Around the Oval with Alex Gleitman, Big Knee Kickoff with Kevin Noon, Mark Givler, and Bill the Bank Green. Just did a fantastic episode of Gives in the Bank a couple days ago. They look like they have a couple more things kind of ready to go as some additional news breaks in the coming days. So make sure you're subscribed to all of those shows on whatever podcast platform you like. And also make sure you check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. We will have a ton of coverage as we head into the Rose Bowl season and the recruiting back end of the recruiting cycle kind of heats up as they look to finish out their class, potentially add some transfers, and much more. Should be lots to talk about, lots of fun, all at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.